I want to start off by saying thanks. I really appreciate you all coming. This is something that I'm pretty passionate about. I like system design that makes sense and makes life easy, and that's what this is aiming to do. The other thing I want to say is that whole thing about being from the States. If I say something and it doesn't make sense, just yell at me now, and I'll say it in a different way that will probably also not make sense, but at least I'll be trying. Okay? So why are we here? Dear computer, go. There we go. So it has been announced that all of our permissions need to be moved off of our beloved profile, right? This is a bit of a problem. We do have some time, right? We've got until spring 26. That is not very much time. So I did a poll. I asked everybody, if you can go on your Hoover app, you can check on this, but how many of you, just show of hands, believe that in your org, I'm not gonna call on you, right? In your org, you have the right number of profiles and the right number of permission sets. Nothing more than is necessary. Yeah, show of hands, everyone, that's true. That's what I thought, Okay, we're all ready, this is gonna be great. So, we have to figure out a way to do this. Now, whenever I'm trying to solve a problem, we should always think about like, what's our goal, right? And whether you're an admin or an architect, it doesn't really matter. They're both ultimately the same if you just heard Francis out there speaking, but this is our goal. Our goal is to be well architected, we want to be thoughtful, and it needs to work, right? Specifically for this, I want to look at that top one. We want to be secure, and we want to be focused on this idea of the principle of least privilege. Show of hands, who knows what this is? Okay, so the principle of least privilege is this basic idea. Thanks for showing up.
You're welcome, sir.
I love you, Barry. You're a good person. So, principle of least privilege is this basic idea that if you don't need access to something, maybe it's an object, maybe it's a field, a tab, an app, doesn't really matter. If you don't need access, you should actually just not give it to you. Now, that does make things a little bit more complicated. It puts more nuance into our environment, but it's necessary nuance. From a risk perspective, you're exposed to less. You're less risky if I just don't give you access to whatever that thing is. Right? Also, from a data perspective, it makes navigating way easier. If you're trying to look for John Smith in the United States, you're gonna have a very hard time finding John Smith, right? Unless I've sorted out a way through my data access to reduce your access to only the records that really matter to you, and now all of a sudden it becomes easy, right? So principle of least privilege is gonna be one of the big guiding principles as we move forward in this design. So to level set on the tools, we still have profiles. The profile itself is not going anywhere. Right, and it's going to be necessary for things of which you can only have one, like a default, right? Default record type is still going to reside on the profile. There's no way to do that in a permission set. Right now, of course, we get permission sets and permission set groups, right? These are really simple tools. Permission set groups contain a fancy feature called muting permissions. Muting permissions, it's a real thing, it's out there, and if you follow my model, you don't need it. I did that by design. Muting permissions are kind of dangerous. We'll talk about why in a little bit. All right, so the way we're going to do this, we're going to use 3 permission sets and a permission set group. Each permission set has a job, right? That's it. 3 permission sets and a group, it's always going to work. So here's how we start. We start with a profile, right? We still have it because we still have a default. Right, you also need it. Somebody had asked this question in advance. Well, what about page layout assignment? Well, you can only do that right now using the profile. And since, again, I bet most of us have not migrated to a world where we're using Lightning record pages and apps, we're probably still using some page layouts, which means we still need this profile, right? So it's still going to be sitting here at the bottom. I would recommend the minimum access, right? It's a good starting place. We will have less work to do if that's where we started. Now we're going to start into our 3 permission sets. The first of these is called the base permission set. Think of this as a functional permission set. So can I send email? Can I run flows? Right? These are really basic things. They're like system permissions, stuff like that. We're all going to stick that in here. MFA enforcement, I'm an SSO user, that kind of stuff is going to live in here. I'm going to reuse this permission set a lot, right? A lot. After that, I have the read level permission set. Now, read level permission set's a smaller group, smaller audience than the base permission set. I might only have 1 base permission set for my entire company. The read is smaller, right? Think of it as everyone in my environment that is using sales, right? What's going to go in read? All of the apps, tabs, objects, and field, shocker, at the read level only, okay? If you need the ability to edit it, you're not getting it from here, right? Someone always asks this question when I do this, well, what if I have an Apex controller that gives you access to the field? Fine, put it here, right? But generally speaking, apps, tabs, objects, fields, right? Apps, tabs, objects, fields, only at the read level. The last one is where all the fun is. This is your persona permission set. A persona permission set is probably aligned to the actual job that the end user has. I'm a sales rep. I get to edit these fields on these objects. I can create this kind of record. Cool, that all lives up here. Reusability of this permission set, small. Right? Read level permission sets, high amount of reusability. Persona permission set, low. Right? That's it. We're going to do one thing. We're going to throw these in a permission set group. And the permission set group is going to be named after the persona that we created the persona permission set for. Now, I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm really lazy. The reason I name it after the job is so I know what to give you when you show up. Right? How many people have IT that manages like user provisioning? Like, you know, the brand new admin, we give them the most important job, setting up all the users correctly, right? This makes tons of sense. I'm really glad we thought it through. Guess what? Maybe we should make it easy for them. They're drowning already, right? So if you do this, what are you gonna end up with? You're gonna end up with a ton of permission set groups, like one for every job. But you're not gonna have that many permission sets because we're gonna reuse the permission sets in a really savvy way to reduce what we have to maintain. And that's really important, right? So let's see how this works. I've concocted a ridiculous scenario that's very standard, that I'm sure we've all experienced. And essentially what we have is we have 5 different people, 5 different groups of people, and they all have a different need, right? Doesn't even really matter what their needs are, but we've developed a new app. It's got an object, tabs, fields, an app, right? And we need to figure out how to give everybody the right level of access. Now, a lot of us, what would we have done? Well, okay, here's a permission set that has everything you need to use it. Oh, but then compliance needs it too, and they're not allowed to edit things. Okay, so I create another permission set for them. Oh, and then legal needs it. They need to see everything, and they can delete something. Okay, fine. Oh, but the managers, they're not allowed to delete this, and the regular users, they can't even see half of it. This becomes complicated, right? So let's look at how it's going to work. We're going to start out with the permission set groups for each persona, and everybody's living on that Salesforce minimum access profile. Yeah? So far, so good. We're going to create our base permission set. And now guess what? This new build, it was an app, a tab, objects, and fields. Do I touch this at all? No, I don't. I don't have to do anything, right? But you can already see we're reusing this base level because most of these people are on the same base, right? Now, I have 2 types of agents here. I have support agents and people in my sales division. So I'm going to update the support and the sales read with the app, the tab, the objects at a read level, and the fields necessary for each at the read level. So far, I'm editing 2 permission sets. And by editing the 2, I've already enabled my entire organization to see what they need to see. I edited 2 things, and everybody sees what they need to see. That's brilliant, right? If you scale this to the real world, like my organization, when we started this transition, we had 1,126 permission sets. That was a bit to manage. This is easier, yeah? The last level is we do have some persona permission sets, but I can reuse these a little bit. You'll note the sales team against these other people. The sales team is still pervasive. Well, the reason why I reuse it here is I have less to add into this sales VP and sales director because I'm building on what is below that, right? So this keeps life easy. Literally the last slide. Technically, you can mute permissions in a permission set group. And I promised Cheryl, who's the product manager in charge of all of this, that I would mention that. But here's the deal. Muting permissions is dangerous. Anybody want to hazard a guess why? Say it again? Yes. So, muting is dangerous because of this idea called scope, right? Scope means that within a bubble, the following is true, right? So if I mute, let's say it's the ability to delete a record, if I mute it within the permission set group, and then that brand new admin that's in charge of user provisioning gives you the permission set, your permissions are no longer muted. So I give you the permission set that is in your permission set group. Everything in the permission set is no longer muted. From a principle of least privilege perspective, that's terrifying, right? I don't want to build with that in mind. If you want to build with that in mind, create one permission set, add literally every single thing to it, and then maintain all of your permission set groups in reverse. You are now editing everything all the time, every time you build anything. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Please don't do that. That is literally it. This is the slide to take a picture of, and we have plenty of time for Q&A. So, who's first? Was the American dialect so strong no one has a question? Because I feel like I could go back, we have time.
Hi, so with the retirement of profiles and permission sets going to be there, there's still a gap that I can see in terms of reporting on changes to metadata. So you have the audit trail, which you can run, and that gives you 6 months of data, but it's not giving you an easy access to interrogate that report. Mm-hmm. That comes out in Excel format. Are you aware of any tool that Salesforce has in their roadmap or any partner has in their roadmap that might help us in this situation?
So do you want to be able to report on it historically or right now?
So right now and trigger alerts. So my thoughts at the moment around this is a custom object and triggered flow around the audit trail object. So when there's a record written into the audit trail object, it pulls that into the custom object, and you can then build flows and alerts off that.
So honestly, if I'm trying to figure out who can do a certain thing, setting up a list view and just having that be your criteria is a great way to narrow it down right out of the gate. If you use version control like I do, you can also just look in VS Code, and that is faster than anything. Like literally, if you've got everything in version control, dear Lord, it's the easiest thing in the world. Query a certain thing equals true, and it's right there. There is a tool, there's an app you can install off the App Exchange. I'm blanking on the name of it. I'll look it up and give it to you afterwards. But it's an installed package you can put in. It's a good way to see user permissions. It's a 3-axis thing, so it is difficult to report on. I don't think it's that, but he said is it permission set analyzer. It's a different tool, and it's off the App Exchange. I'll find it for you when we're done. You can use Inspector. True story. Spoken like a guy who owns a company.
Great clients.
Some guys.
So the question is, if you want to enhance this, let's say, setup with new capabilities, and say you have 3 apps here, so you have the read permission sets for 3 apps, and then you want to add a capability that will be added like to 2 out of the 3. Yes. So how would you manage that? Are you updating 2 permission sets at the same time, or you have another setup?
So when you build your new, whatever it's going to be, your new whatever, you're going to have as part of your business requirements, these audiences need this access. If this model's in place, I should know at the start exactly where I'm going. And in fact, this is, so for my company, which I'm not going to talk about because they're totally irrelevant. This is a US-based company that doesn't matter over here at all. There are 387 job titles which correlate to only 120 something different distinct levels of access. But by job, I know what you need. And once you tell me the name of the job, I can tell you the name of the 3 permission sets because I can just find the group. And so then I can add the relevant pieces in the right place. So does the new tool come with any functional enhancement? If so, that functional enhancement lives in the base. Same thing. Do I need to do a new app, a tab, an object, or a field? Cool. Read level goes in here, and anything beyond read goes in the persona. That build will always be stable, and I will never over-enhance anybody's access as long as you maintain that read is always read. Right? And then don't put anything sensitive in read, right? If you've got social security number, driver's license number, don't put those things in read. Right? That sensitive data should be uphill.
Would you have any tips for this approach actually going to the business? Asking the people that actually have, what access do you need? Because we always try to challenge them on, do you really need it? And they usually come back with like, yes, just in case, but you don't want that. I mean, do you have any tips on actually approaching the business person before you start building the set?
Yeah, I would never ask a user what they need access to. So honestly, one of the easiest ways to do this is to say, hey, we're going to migrate you off of this page layout because it's terrible, and we're going to move you into a new Lightning record page and take every single field off of it except for the ones that are required, and then go, oh, I didn't know you needed those, and then see what they can remember.
So I've got a stupid question, and I'm hoping it's a really stupid question because I was going to ask you with no other people around. Nice. So obviously Salesforce minimum access profile is a great place to start, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in all the orgs, it's already there, and it's generally already got crap in it.
Too much access.
Whereas you've added a field, you've just gone like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
How do we start again? Is there a really I want someone to tell me there's an easy way to almost go, new Salesforce minimum access profile, go.
I will confess that in my org, I don't use this profile.
Well, that was the discussion I had with somebody yesterday, and that was kind of what we hit of like, maybe we just start again on a blank profile.
So I would. The challenge is all of the objects that still require page layout assignments. And in reality, this is not going to work for 99% of the orgs I oversimplify for the purpose of demo, right? But in reality, what are we going to do? We're going to create probably one profile per department with literally nothing in it except for what must go there. So the things that are, the default for that profile, we'll keep it there. And then for the time being, we'll also make sure that the page layout assignments for that profile and that audience line up. But then I'm going to move everything else into this model, right? But no, even the Salesforce minimum access profile, the first time you flip to it, by the way, every single page load error you get, it's because you didn't set the page layout assignment. Because that'll happen, right? Interestingly enough, because that profile was created after our orgs had been created, if you've never used it, the first time you go, look, and you'll have literally a null where the assignment should be. And that's why the page doesn't load. So just save yourself some time Googling. But it's not a good profile. It contains tons of stuff.
So what you're actually saying is really just start with a fresh one.
No, this just gives the gist of it is you don't want any access. So yeah, mine right now, my new one is, I have a profile called base, which is nothing. And then I clone it and rename it for whichever group. And then my empty profile doesn't actually go anywhere. Yeah, and then the default values.
One thing I would say, be careful of hidden code and it ensures us. We've just finished a project now, where we give you this, all that access, we did it by this.
Didn't know you were going to call me out like that, man.
But now I'm just thinking again, if you do go in, if your org, and you built them, good, but if someone else built them, and we found that, it's like, I've lost this access, your old problem, now this access, and you find out.
where in your story do you put your then access to Apex controllers? That's in the persona?
So Apex controllers are interesting. If you need an Apex controller for the ability to view, it should go in the read level. However, I would ask, does your Apex controller reference a custom setting giving you read access only to the page? If it doesn't, then it actually lives in the persona and you need to fix it, right? Because our Apex controllers, or if you've got any type of controller that is checking access, it should check against a custom setting so that it can neatly fit into the model. And then we should always be building 3 levels of access, right? Well, I can read it, I can edit it, and now I have the ability to delete it. And those are separate custom permissions. And I should be checking, does the running user have this custom permission? If yes, then run along. If no, hide that button, don't display it all, whatever the desired behavior is.
But so in terms of maintenance then, if you have a control that everyone, it's tied to a Lightning Web Component, for example, and everyone needs to do stuff in that component, you will put that in all the persona permission sets then?
Well, the reason why I would use the custom setting, and then yes, I would, is because that custom setting is very scalable. So if I have, for example, like I have a team that manages leases, and that lease team has like 7 LWCs that do some things for them. All 7 of those LWCs reference the same custom permission. And so I'm using that to provide me with the horizontal scale that I need to address all of that all at once, right? But I have the 3 layers for each, because that's important. If I can't do that, then I run afoul of my compliance and legal teams, because I don't want them editing stuff. They're allowed to see everything, but they can't touch anything. And if I don't build that in, then I end up over-provisioning them because I don't have the ability to do something less. Right? So it's one of the drawbacks of having custom code, is that if we don't do all this extra work to make it as flexible as the declarative stuff, then we find ourselves with custom code that doesn't do what a standard page layout would. And so we're asking the business to then make that security trade-off. But that's like a very silent request, right? Nobody says, oh, hey, I'm not gonna write the code that does this because you didn't ask me. We just have to do it for them because the business doesn't know to ask.
If you're creating a larger functional block that you want to control with a permission set, is that something where you would create a permission set of itself and then add it to each of the personas, or would you add the permissions to the personas themselves?
So particularly if you're talking about a large functional block of code, I would have it check a custom permission and then add the custom permission everywhere where I needed it at the right level, right? So if it's the ability to edit or delete, then I would put that in the persona level. I would put the read in the read level. Does that make sense?
So you wouldn't create your own permission set for functional?
I would not.
Okay.
Because
so you really end up with these, right?
Yes.
There is nothing else.
Yeah, no, I'm very mean to my team every time they want to build another one. And I just say no. It's just no, right? I'm an architect, half of my job is saying no.
I have a quick question around the moving from one set of stuff to the other set of stuff. So with your like 16 bajillion permission sets that you had already, to then move into your wonderful, here we are with our 3 layers and everything, give me some top tips on getting from there to here without screwing everybody over.
So my top tip is beer. If you've got anything else that relieves stress, that's great. I'd go for that as well. So how to migrate is a great question. Ultimately, what I've done is I picked a narrow team, and I said, we're going to have you be the start of all of this. So it was just a team of 10, and I've got 2,500 people. So of those 10 folks, you get a base. You're the only base in the whole org. You're the only read, and you're the only persona. And then I'm just asking myself this question each time: Is this a functional? Can I do this? And then, does the "can I do this" apply to everyone? or is it really fancy and it actually applies to you? And then I build out these, and then when I start the next team, it was another team, but in that department, and so I just grew there. And so you start making these logical jumps, and I would start with the team that is the biggest, and then add your other teams because you'll have less work to do. But once you do that, you'll see that you end up building one base, and let's say for a sales team, as an example, you'll build the one base, you'll build the one read, and then you just make a persona. That next team, you're just making a persona and reusing these, and you're probably not editing anything, right? Or maybe small additions to read, right? And so as you grow along, the first one is the hardest one. In terms of actually transitioning them, I would really recommend picking like 2 or 3 users and be like, hey, I'm really sorry, but you are the chosen one, right? Don't change the profile, don't. Just build everything out and make sure it works. And then when they're not looking, flip them to a different profile, make sure the page layout assignments are there and see if everything works, right? And then eventually just move everybody, right? So the way that I've done it, I had my targeted 10 users. Well, I only took 2 of them and moved them over. And then once they stopped saying anything to me in Slack, I grabbed the other 8 and moved them all and didn't tell anybody, right? And then nobody knew, it was great. And then I just scaled that up to bigger and bigger teams. How long did it take? I'd have to be done in order to answer that question. We have quite a while. I would recommend starting as soon as you possibly can because this migration will be slow and painful, and it's tedious, right? I mean, Salesforce giving us this kind of runway to do something is really generous, but I think they only did it because they knew how long it was going to take. And we've already got a feature out there. You can click a button and turn that profile into a permission set, which is going to nightmarishly complicate your orgs, right? So don't do that.
What about IT users? Have you done anything like this to separate what they're doing for elevated users, and what does that look like?
Yes, they're just a persona.
But how many personas? So I was looking at permissions, and for somebody to install a managed package in mushrooms to 29 permissions,
Yep.
manage users and all those things, should you do that in one persona or multiple personas?
So, well, for the people you're talking about true system administrators.
But I'm trying to remove having people actually have system admin for
Yeah,
reasons.
yeah.
I'm trying to separate them to know here's what you do in production.
So that is a problem that Salesforce is aware of, and they're actively trying to move off of the mega permissions, like customize the application, manage users. These are big, huge, massive permissions that are just necessary for all sorts of stuff that doesn't make sense. And so that's a roadmap feature they're actually doing. They're building it, it's planned. I want to say that the first one is like manage users is being split out into like 12 things.
It's already been split up quite a bit because it used to be one thing and I was playing with it and we do different things with it.
Yeah.
But you're telling me I should reach out to Cheryl, right?
Yes, I would continue complaining to Cheryl. Like, please do that. We should all complain to Cheryl frequently. She's on Twitter.
She's amazing.
She is amazing. She's a wonderful person. I really like her, but complain. We have a lot to complain about.
Do you have a cheat sheet for stuff that has to be in the profile? Like we use Service Cloud, and there's bits around Omni and chat and groups and bits that are going to cause us a problem. Is there a community, I guess, crowdsourced list of stuff that's going to be a problem?
I don't have a list.
Can you make one?
Like right now? Stop clapping. That's a really good idea. And Barry owns a company. He should pay someone to do that.
So Barry's going to do that? Is that?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, anything else? I have no idea what time it is. I have a question in the back.
Any particular issues around partner presently? Because they don't have access to like record pages yet, just simply not always like the profile, or it just be like horizontal extension.
I would so you mean partners as in community users?
Yeah.
Yes, there's all sorts of issues. Community user access and the guest site user are more challenging, and we should just have a conversation where we cry over beer, because it just doesn't work super well. There are inherent differences in the profile, whether Salesforce chooses to acknowledge that or not, they're there. So I would say yes. I have communities and like my FSL-based partners and my normal Community Plus users, they are different. They're a different breed, and they don't work like the others. I would still recommend a permission set group approach, but it is going to be a little bit more nuanced than this. It's a good question.
Are you aware of any initiative within Salesforce to get rid of this terrible partner cloud, and you want to enable your different partners to have read access to different opportunities and stuff?
Yeah.
It always creates new, does it create permissions?
I think it automatically creates some permissions. Cheryl, you can find her on Twitter, and you can complain. The one thing I will say is that this portion of Salesforce is incredibly responsive. So if you bring up a problem and present it, they will put it on the roadmap. Like, Cheryl is an activist. She is trying to make this better for us, and I do appreciate that.
It's probably not a new problem, right? Everyone is aware of it, I guess. So the question is, are they already working on that?
Yeah, are you familiar with the expression, the squeaky wheel gets the grease?
Yeah.
Cheryl, on Twitter. I should put her information up here now.
So actually, what's your last name? Is it just Cheryl?
Since I'm standing on stage, hold on, wait, where's my phone? Cheryl, this is gonna be funny. Yeah, Feldman, yes, Cheryl Feldman. No. Hold on. I will tweet her now. As I'm wont to do. This is not to say that you all have to just watch me. I can answer questions too, while tweeting at Cheryl.
This is what they want.
The people will be reaching out. I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna hear about that. All right. Any last questions?
Where do we send the flowers to your funeral?
Chicago. Anywhere. I'll find out. Thank you all so much. It's been great.
Eden with Salesforce is a game changer, an easy-to-use financial package that provides advanced features that you simply can't get from Xero or QuickBooks. It's based on a simple truth that integrating your finance and CRM systems on Salesforce is efficient. All your data's in one place. There are no integrations. Dashboards deliver your reporting without complicated Excel spreadsheets. Native Salesforce automates the mundane. Implementation is quick, in one VAT quarter, and minimal training is required. There are 3 versions: free forever, economy, and business class, which adds more sophisticated features and multi-companies. And it's all backed up with a 12-month, no argument, money-back guarantee. Thank you for listening.